Alright everyone, we are looking once again at systems of equations. That means we've got more than one equation, and with all of these problems we're going to have two linear equations, and we're looking for where the two lines cross. We've got a new method for solving this out. This is called substitution. This is my personally favorite method for solving this out. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we do one of these problems. Alright, here we've got our two equations. We've got 4x plus 5y equals 2 and x plus y equals negative 1. So what we're doing here is we are going to be taking one of our equations and plugging it into the other equation. So the way that we want to do this is we get to pick. We've got a lot of options here on what we solve for and where we plug in, but we need to take one of our equations and solve for a variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the second equation here and I'm going to solve for y. To get y by itself, I need to get rid of this x over here. So I'm going to subtract x on both sides. When I do this, I'm going to end up with y equals negative 1 minus x. Now this doesn't need to be in slope-intercept form or anything like that, so I don't need to have the x first. You can have the x first, it won't change your answer, but you don't have to move things around. Once you have this y by itself, this y is the same y as the first equation. So you are going to take this and plug it into the other equation. You can't plug into the same equation. If you were to take this and plug it into the second equation, you would get something that didn't make any sense at all. We're going to take this and plug it into the top equation up here and solve. So all I'm going to do is rewrite this top equation here. Now, instead of this y, I'm going to put an empty set of parentheses where I'm going to end up putting the negative 1 minus x. So instead of y, I now have the empty parentheses here. I'm going to put negative 1 minus x inside. We plugged this in because this was where y was, and that's what we solved out for. Obviously, if we were to solve out for x, we would plug in for x. But we solved out for y, so we're plugging in for y here. Now we want to simplify, and we'll be able to find a number to represent x. So first thing I want to do, since I've got this 5 in front of the parentheses, is multiply this 5 times everything inside. I'm going to distribute this 5 to both of the terms that are inside the parentheses. So 5 times negative 1 will be negative 5, and 5 times negative x will be negative 5x. Everything else is going to stay the same, so we're just going to bring it down. So we've got the 4x out here, and we've got the 2 over here on the other side of the equal sign. So now we want to simplify. We want to combine like terms. So I've got 4x minus 5x, so that'll give me negative 1x, and that equals we still have the minus 5, so we're going to have minus 5 here. And that equals positive 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to cancel out this negative 5 here, so we can solve for x. We're going to add 5 to both sides. And then we're going to divide by negative 1. And so what we get is x equals negative 7. And so what we want to do next, because remember, when we were solving by graphing, we had both an x and a y, we had a point. We need to find our y value here. So what we're going to have to do is we are going to have to take this x and we're going to have to plug it into one of our two equations. You get to pick whichever one you want to plug into, whichever one seems easier. I'm going to plug into the second equation here because I feel like that would be easier. So I rewrite my equation and I substitute negative 7 in. So to get y by itself, I add 7 on both sides. And I get y equals 6. So my answer is both the x and the y. Negative 7 comes first because it's the x value. 6 comes second because it, did I say that right? Negative 7 comes first because it's the x value. 6 comes second because it's the y value. X comes before y in the alphabet, so x comes before y in our points. And the point, 7, 6, is our, or negative 7, 6, is our solution here.